Hi, I have a big pleasure here to introduce Johanna Maska, CEO of Global Situation Room.
Thank you.
Johanna,
so much.
do you mind introducing yourself to the
no
audience?
problem. No problem. So I am now CEO of Global Situation Room, a public affairs firm. We're based in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles with partners across the globe. But before that, I worked for President Barack Obama. I worked for him for the beginning of the Iowa caucuses, when it was very unlikely that he would become the 44th president. I just got off the stage having talked about the route to the possible when it all seems impossible. Thrilled to be here at Blockshow and happy to talk with you.
That is definitely sounding a lot like the blockchain community, you know, the route from impossible to possible.
Yes.
So what attracted you actually to the blockchain community?
Well, I was invited to this conference, and it's interesting that I was invited because I've now had the pleasure of working with a number of entrepreneurs in this space. Back in 2015, I left the White House, and I'm fascinated with a number of technologies: healthcare, financial tech, health tech, financial tech, government tech, all being some of them, all being tied to blockchain. Actually, slowly but surely, I've become an advisor on different companies. And I find, women working to use the blockchain to provide more economic empowerment to women, people around the world getting opportunities, whether it's through, power sources and controlling your own destiny, to looking at the latest trends in healthcare and how could we find out epidemics at a faster rate. And so slowly but surely, I have been working with more and more entrepreneurs in this space. And I have to say, this conference has been particularly inspiring at the number of people around the globe who are talking about using blockchain for human rights, for those kinds of equality and justice opportunities for people who may not have those opportunities within their own countries.
You're echoing words from earlier today. We've had two other speakers, fantastic speakers, talk about number one, cryptocurrency being about giving back to the community, stepping away from the traditional pyramid scheme and actually going into a more community-based environment where it benefits everyone. And secondly, about where blockchain only in the last 18 years has moved from being just born as a new industry and a new concept, given the smart contracts on Ethereum, to now speaking at, as you said, a government level, healthcare, really solving large-scale problems today.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic to have someone like you actually join the community and being inspired by it. So when we talk about blockchain and what is possible, what have you seen in the environment from a government perspective potentially, and being adopted actually as a force of good?
Well, and that's one thing I've had a lot of questions about. I mean, people will say, oh, all regulation is bad regulation. And I don't believe that to be the case. I actually believe that we have to all be involved in our destiny. And so to that point, we have to look at the ways that blockchain can be involved in governments if this is going to be what people want it to be, and solve human rights issues and give people that opportunity. Because governments are, especially the United States, the prime job, I believe, is to serve the American people. And so if we have a better way to serve them through new technologies, then those in government need to be aware and part of those discussions. So it's been a pleasure to reach out to some of my colleagues who have instituted some of these new technologies at the federal level. But you have to remember, in the United States, and this is the same around the world, government is complex and various different levels. So you have, federal government, you have state governments, you have local governments, and even within local governments, you have different communities. So whether we're talking about integrating it at the school system, which is incredibly crucial, which route you use to integrate this into school systems is going to be really important to make sure that we're providing the right resources. But I spoke at the conference about the route to the possible, from impossible. And it started in a very focused fashion with President Obama. We put all of our resources in Iowa. We had very thin operations in every other state. And our sole focus was engagement and getting people involved and talking to high school students about their future and what they wanted it to be and getting them to be part of this movement. And I think you can find some similar attributes that can be applied to different blockchain technologies.
Definitely. I mean, it sounds like a lot like what we've been speaking today a lot about. One of the biggest topics we've spoken about is how do we bring this technology from just being in a small community of people who really believe in it and involving people one by one. How do we actually bring it to scale?
Yeah.
Because it can't keep living in a small ecosystem. It has to be something that a lot of people are involved with. So working with governments and kind of like the communities, how would you say the best way to actually bring people on with technology? Because it's quite different from a political standpoint, but there's also a lot of similarities at the same time.
And in fact, our firm, Global Situation Room, we have a conference called the Entrepreneurship Export Exchange, and we talk about the best companies now are designed globally. That's, you have partners around the world, people who are working with you. So I had the pleasure to get to know Illumination last year. They're, the Minions. They're the creators of the Minions. And it was interesting to me to find out about that CEO's journey to Illumination, and what he created was by traveling around the world and studying all the different design techniques, and then having collaborators around the world who created a product. They literally had a 24-hour work cycle, but people were able to sleep because you have the 24-hour work cycle. Your other offices in a different location are working, and then you're waking up and you're giving feedback. And that work cycle and the innovators and the collaborators that they brought in speaking globally, they produced a product that they are now licensing globally. That's not only the route to a product that's going to appeal, but the revenue that's sustainable for a company. I left the White House fascinated by technology and how much it had changed even the U.S. while I was working with the president. And it's going to just speed up in terms of the pace that the lives of people are going to be affected by technology. But I found in Silicon Valley this very create and sell mentality.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it was all about, getting an exit.
Release or,
yeah. And I don't actually think that that's produced as much good for people as if we create long-term sustainable solutions for people that give back. So to the point that I've seen some of the different perspectives in this community talking about what it is we need to do, it's similar to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, where I live now, only city in America, no racial majority with diaspora communities larger than home country populations. The technology boom there has been one that the city has very much been advocating it for it to be inclusive. And for that optimistic perspective to include those different voices. How do you do that was your question, right? So, it's, you have an idea, a solution for a problem in your own community. You're likely not the only one dealing with that need and that solution. And I find often people will be like, oh, this is, my solution, and I'm not going to share it with anyone else. Well, no one else knows that it exists if you don't share with them and get those collaborators. And of course, you have to protect, all of your securities, and you protect all of these. But in finding collaborators around the world, they may bring a different perspective to you on, what it is that could be helpful that you may not have thought about. And to that end, I think what we're seeing is innovation that's more representative, that has more voices, ultimately is the one, and if they have the funding, ultimately will be the most successful of that technology. And I hope that continues to be the case.
Yeah, I come personally also from a data background and been in tech for a while. And I don't think we've experienced the similar kind of community feel and sharing of ideas, sharing of knowledge as is taking place in a blockchain community. It's a whole different mentality of approaching business. A lot of people see it as more of a helping one another because that helps oneself. Instead of the kind of closing off the walls and you can't look at what I'm doing because I need to compete with you on a time scale to get product out launched. So I'm glad to see this kind of community continue in different aspects.
And it's really necessary right now, I would say, because it's only with that co-opetition type mentality that people will understand what this new technology can do. Because I believe in winning campaigns, and so that campaign, whether it's in politics or for a business or for a cause, you need money and you need oxygen to be successful. And your oxygen has to be focused on the right component that's really going to fuel your fandom. And so with that, I think we're seeing the co-opetition. It'll have a mutual benefit as the new technology is growing and people are trying to figure out, okay, what is this? There's also risk because, we've heard a lot already about people in this space may not all have that same value. And that's just a fact of life in everything.
Someone trying to take advantage.
And so that's, I think, the conversation that we'll have on regulation and how do you regulate yourself, which I think this community is trying to do some of that, and proactively go forth for the regulation that will allow the best instead of the most moneyed to the best idea to percolate and really thrive.
Yeah, that's another one of the biggest topics we've been speaking about here in these two chairs today, about misinformation in the community and how do we actually help promote good companies and good people forward and report on the ones who are trying to take advantage. And I think that you could take that and translate that in a lot of different fields, also in a lot of developing countries. How do you actually help the ones who want to, build a real business, get loans? How do you help the ones that really need healthcare? Instead
of those who are just saying it.
Exactly,
and this is the interesting thing is I always say Barack Obama would not have become president had John Kerry not put him on stage before his speech in 2004. You have to be given a platform. So, if you flash back, President Obama was not able to attend previous Democratic National Conventions. So here was this great voice with great ideas who wasn't given the opportunity to thrive.
To rise.
That happens too many times, too many countries across the world, and that is a waste of our human capital, and it's not allowing us to be the best version of ourselves, to really boost those voices and boost those ideas. So I really do believe that those innovators who can, focus, those who have a voice need to start sharing it with those who are legitimately and very truthfully, coming up, because they can help cut through the noise for a lot of people who can't navigate that noise. Like John Kerry picked Barack Obama, those who are big need to pick the next folks and not pick so much as, work to find those voices from other areas, from different backgrounds that may not look the same. I spoke on stage about the importance of women being involved in this movement, because I do believe that women will play a crucial role and need to. Women literally birth the future. And so for our children and for all that we want to see for our lives, we need to be involved. And so I think it's a matter of reaching out to those people, bringing them into the process and really elevating them as you elevate your solution and your brand.
Absolutely. I mean, those are fantastic words, and I believe with the same mentality that the community needs to look at all different kind of cultures and backgrounds, and not be exclusive but inclusive of everyone. That's the only way we can actually get all the ideas. Kind of I love the example you gave of the minions. That is the only way you can actually build a brand that will thrive in every corner of the world if you have the same kind of give input. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming. There's just one last question I have.
Yeah.
What is the biggest impact you've had today? Like, what was someone here that really influenced you and went, wow, that is something quite unique?
That's a good question. You know, I watched speaker after speaker from various different countries, and I loved the representation of all of these different ideas. I think the most powerful moments I've had thus far are some of the women who are right now in the background, who are thinking, what do I want to do? You know, how do I do this? And I have to say myself, I was a woman in the background for a long, long time. I was off the record. I was doing all of the planning. I was working with the press secretary and with the communications director, bringing people to the Situation Room to do all of the planning for things. And so, you know, some of the motivating things have been, you know, seeing some women or a woman who I saw at Dublin Tech Summit, and see how women can rise up and really fulfill those incredible positions. And so seeing that effect of being there, I think it just proves to me that we need more people who maybe don't fit the current stage dynamics.
Fantastic words to end on. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending.
I was going to say, I'll handshake with
Pleasure. Yeah. You got to make sure it doesn't fall off.
Thank you for everything.
Pleasure.